Okay, so here we go again. Hopefully, these are proving useful for you to do revision. This is the week 5 session looking at industry evolution and strategic change, which means we're in week 6. 2 more weeks, and the first assignment is due in. That's your case study, and then another 2 weeks, and your multiple choice is to be done. So there's plenty to do, and things are getting very busy. So good luck with following the course as best you can. Okay, so it is a difficult course, but the key thing is each week read the chapter that's been given to you and read the articles. And although you may find that it's difficult in terms of time, it's very difficult to be successful if you don't. So that's your choice, really. Let's think about strategy. We've already said that strategy can be different things to different people. That for some organizations, strategy is about looking at the outside world, trying to understand the changes and transformations taking place and all those mega trends in terms of political, economic, social, technological, as well as competition and the changing customer behaviors. And that's the outside-in view. And then there's the alternative view, which are those sorts of companies like Google's and Apple's and eBay's and Amazon's, who've all been hugely successful by coming along with something which was based on their own capabilities, their own imagination, their own creativity, and by developing something which they thought, you know something, this solves a problem that all customers have, that all markets have. And actually it creates a very new solution to problems that have existed for a long time. And they've been incredibly successful too. Now, it's not true to say that they are more successful than those companies that look outside first. So the inside view is not more successful than the outside view. If you look at the history of companies, almost every company has an outside view at some point because they're having to manage existing businesses. So what we know is that when we start a business, the way that we develop strategy may be different from the way that we develop strategy when the business has become mature. So that's what this session is really about, just a review of the changing way that strategy is formed as organizations grow and as markets grow and as industries transform. So we can imagine that in the 4 main stages of a marketplace, or for a business or a product, they're very similar. We have an introduction stage, we have a growth stage, we have a maturity stage, and we have a decline stage. And you can see, can't you, that in the introduction stage, typical companies may not know exactly what the marketplace is, but they might have an idea about a great product or a great service that they think the market might like. So their driver might well, in fact, be driven by the inside-out view, because they have the imagination to try something different, to come up with a new type of product or service. But they don't really know if the market demand is there until they go and test the marketplace. When they test the marketplace, of course, it may be successful and therefore it might grow, or it might be unsuccessful and therefore it might disappear and you never hear about it. So strategy is likely to change over time. But to begin with, if you have no idea what the marketplace wants, the likelihood is an outside in view is not going to be successful, because nobody knows if your new idea will be successful. Nobody knows if your new idea is something they might purchase, because they have to give up what they previously had, and customers don't like doing that. All right, so in this industry life cycle, we can see that over time, businesses and the way that they develop strategy will change. How it changes, though, depends on a whole range of different situations. How quickly the company grows, how big the marketplace is, how profitable the marketplace is, how much competition there is in the marketplace, whether or not it's technological innovation or a different type of innovation. So one of the things that we looked at last week is this idea that over time, product innovation becomes less and less important as more and more competitors join the marketplace. It becomes much more difficult to differentiate yourself based on a product. All the products start looking the same after a period of time. That's why you get to the point of maturity. Customers can no longer differentiate between one another, and therefore one particular company cannot grow any more than another. So the companies that are successful, who are looking for sustainable competitive advantage, have to think about developing value for themselves, their shareholders, and for their customers, which is different from products alone. And in that case, they might move towards process innovation. In other words, can we make this mobile phone half the price and twice as quickly? Because that will allow us to essentially differentiate our profits compared to our competition, even though our products themselves may not be significantly dissimilar to the competition. And in fact, although we didn't talk about this in terms of the slides, you can also imagine some companies, they have another type of innovation, and it's called position innovation. And that position innovation is the way that we change the way the market perceives us. So we might, within our products, develop a product range where one product is specific to a niche marketplace, a very high price or a very high risk or a very high performance marketplace. So in the PC market, we have some companies that will produce gaming computers, gaming PCs, which essentially have very fast video cards, very fast graphics, very fast processors, which allow you to play games as though you were playing them on a state-of-the-art games machine. So you can see that companies start to segment the marketplace and position themselves as leaders in different niches within those marketplaces. And that's a form of what's called positional innovation. And then there's a final type of innovation. Again, we didn't talk about it in the class, but it's one of the key ways in which organizations can add value and therefore competitive advantage. And that's paradigm innovation. So you take an example of Apple. Apple clearly are very smart at coming up with new ideas, and they could spend their time developing new products themselves, manufacturing those new products themselves, improving the process of that innovation to make the cost of that manufacturing cheaper, to segment their products so that they're different products for different marketplaces. But actually, the other thing they could do is they could just sell under license their brilliant ideas, because it costs you virtually nothing in terms of selling an idea to a partner, and yet you can make huge amounts of income. So ideas have value, and you can sell your ideas in terms of research and development by licensing or selling the patents to other companies. So you can take something which is, we're brilliant at coming with fantastic technologies, and rather than coming up with the technology itself, come up with the idea for the technology which somebody else will buy. So that's very important. You can imagine that strategy in each of these situations will be different. When you're selling a technology and you have that technology, the likelihood is you're going to use an inside-out view. When you're selling a product that's been around for a long time and you're merely adapting it and changing it, particularly to segment it towards the marketplace, you are specifically looking at the marketplace, which is the outside in view. So what happens is there's no one way of developing strategy that's better than another, but it is contextual. And that means there's a right time for certain types of strategy, and there's a right time, or a wrong time rather, for other types of strategy. Okay, so that's a key thing. And what I tried to talk about briefly last week is this idea that over time, things like demand from the customer, or the value that technology places, or the importance of products and the product range and how that needs to adapt over time, or the way that we manufacture and distribute, or for example, how competition behave. What happens is during that introduction, growth, maturity, and decline stage, each of those elements evolve. And that evolution normally equates to a change in strategy. And the question you should be trying to answer is, at any point in the evolution of a marketplace through introduction, growth, maturity, and decline, which is the most appropriate way of developing strategy? If you don't know, then maybe you should do both. Yeah, do you understand? So if you don't know which the right way is, then do both and see which one works. Okay. So something you might want to do in your own time is to work on your case study to see whether or not you have an understanding of how that case study has evolved over time, and what point do you think it is at the moment in terms of the evolution of its marketplace. So just briefly, let's talk about this idea of evolution and revolution. And there's some work by Larry Greiner, which has been done 20, 30 years ago, but it still holds fast today. And that is that as a company grows, it changes. As it changes, the way that strategy is developed will also change because of a series of what we call crises and growth periods. So the simplest way to think about that is a company starts very small. Let's imagine it was Facebook. A group of guys at a university had this brilliant idea to link people together through their social media. And what happened is that creativity resulted in a brilliant idea, well-developed product, great advertising and promotion, and as it started to grow, the company grew through creativity. The problem, of course, is as the company grows, it has to recruit more people, and they don't all have the same values or vision or perceptions or aspirations. And you get this crisis of leadership. Who's in charge? What direction is this company going? And that question has to be answered through a leader deciding what direction should this company be going. And Facebook would make a decision. We're going to go in the route of making ourselves freely available to people, and it's just a social media network which gathers friends together. So you're now growing very quickly because everybody knows it's about linking friends together. The problem is that it becomes difficult to manage if everybody is going in the same direction, because in any company, there has to be some self-control. Finance, for example, is almost always trying to save money. Marketing is always trying to spend money. Production is trying to spend the money they've got so that they can save money in the future. So there's a challenge within any business, because the functional areas need to be able to manage themselves separately. And therefore we have this crisis of what's called autonomy. I need to be in control of my business, and I can't be in control of my business if one person is telling me what to do. So growth stops, there is a crisis. Companies that are successful, though, realize that through leadership and the delegation of leadership, each individual subunit of a business, as it grows in size and complexity, needs to be able to manage itself. So now the business is not a small team of people who knew each other at university. Now the business is 1,000 people or 2,000 people, but they know what they have to do in order to make this business grow. Of course, as time goes on, that growth becomes limiting as there's a lack of control, because if I am looking after my own part of the business, marketing, then I'm not necessarily looking after the finance part of the business because they want to save money. So that balance between delegation and self-control, and then centralized control, and that oscillation is very typical. You can imagine, can't you, that strategy will evolve at the same time, because to begin with, groups of people from a university, very creative, come up with their own solution. That's clearly an inside-out approach. We're coming up with a brilliant idea. We think it'll be successful in the marketplace. We don't know if it will be successful, but maybe it'll even generate a new marketplace. But as the business starts to get larger and more complex, we're now interested more in what is it that our customer wants? Who are our customer and how are our customers changing? So we can see that strategy will evolve, and there will be a series of revolutions in how strategy is determined in any particular business. And in reality, of course, as the business gets bigger and more complex, you'll probably find that there is a mixture of the inside-out evolution and revolutionary type strategy, and then there's more the outside-in, which is what's happening in the marketplace, how can we adapt? And that's really the big issue. Do we need to adapt to the outside, or do we need to create the outside through some form of revolution? Now, you will have covered this in your change management module. So some companies are highly adaptive, some companies tend to respond to internal changes. And this is about a concept which we call dynamic capabilities. Firms' ability to integrate, build and reconfigure internal and external competencies to address rapidly changing environments is what Thies refers to as dynamic capabilities. So a company that can see a change taking place, to change the way it does things, to adapt its value chain, for example, what it can do is it can adapt very quickly to a change in circumstances, whether or not that's economic, political, social, technological, or competitive. Yeah. So that's able to adapt quickly to an external change. But of course, sometimes change is driven by innovation, typically competitors coming in with something completely different. That might be a massive new technology. And therefore, companies also have to be able to evolve and in some cases be revolutionary internally, so that they completely change to do something different. Yeah, they have to work so quickly. Kodak was an example of a company that didn't do this. They became experts at making something which the customer wanted, until the point there were no longer any customers wanting film. And they weren't able to make that transition between making film for people who wanted pictures to making ways of making pictures. Okay, so they missed out. They weren't able to make that change, and they weren't able to be revolutionary that way. So essentially, therefore, we have that issue of how do we What type of strategy should we be using at any point? How do we know what the right strategy is? And dynamic capabilities is partly the answer to this. We need to be sufficiently capable and sufficiently flexible that we can adjust to a changing marketplace, but maybe also that we're creative and inventive enough to be able to create new marketplaces. And that's the success of most long living and modern companies. Okay, so that's a nice summary of what we've done so far. Definitely apply those principles to your case study, and maybe it'll help you to understand whether or not the strategy they were using at the time was the right one or the wrong one, but also it gives you a chance to present your own strategy in terms of a revolutionary strategy, where you're using capabilities of the existing company, or you're going to be using an evolutionary strategy, where essentially you can see there are changes in the marketplace, which are opportunities that the existing company can take advantage of. So some of the key readings that are in the pack cover this concept of dynamic capabilities. Definitely worth reading up on those because it's a hot topic at the moment in business. How do we know what we should be doing? How do we know if we should be evolving or driving a revolution? And if you can answer that question, you're definitely going to be leading the field in strategy. So I hope you've enjoyed this session. Comments about my nice skin, looking like I've lost weight, looking healthier, looking younger, nice hair, always welcome. Please keep them coming. All right, see you in class this week and more fun with multiple choice tests. Okay, bye for now.